This is Taiwan Talk.
This is Taiwan Talk on ICRT.
Welcome to Taiwan Talk. I'm Eric Smith, and today we have a very interesting person in our studio, a world traveler, a reporter. How else would you describe yourself, Joyce?
Joyce is, I guess I'm a very strange person because people, after they hear like you live in India like twice, you want to go back to India, they think I'm crazy. I guess I'm a little bit crazy.
All right, so Joyce Liu has spent the last 4+ years in India, and you recently published a book about your experiences there. Let's start with how you got to India in the first place.
We moved to India because of my husband's job. He's a journalist with Reuters.
And you also were a journalist.
Yes, that's where we met. And then the company put him in Mumbai for 4 years. So basically, I follow him, and I didn't work for Reuters at the time. After we moved to Mumbai, we don't have children, so most of the time I have a lot of free days to wander around on the street in the markets, and that I guess that's why I wrote this book.
Is there a significant or any sort of Taiwanese community over there?
There are very, very few Taiwanese, probably like a handful of Taiwanese businessmen. They were there doing their business, but usually they wouldn't have their family with them.
So you wandering around the streets of Mumbai, you sort of stood out.
Yeah, kind of, yes, because there are not many East Asian faces. So I guess. Personally, I think it's a plus because people notice me. They know I live in the area, and in general, they are quite friendly. And that's what a lot of people say. Are you crazy? It's very dangerous. But in Mumbai, I think it's because there are about 20 million people, so it's almost the population of Taiwan, and it's in a very, very small area. So there are always hundreds, if not thousands of people on the street. Before Mumbai, we lived in Sydney, and that was one of the most beautiful cities in the world.
And quite sparsely populated as well.
Yeah. In Sydney, everything is very orderly, and then the streets are very clean. And when we landed, I can never forget, because when we landed in Mumbai, when we were landing, and then I look out of the window, and they were just slums. Like slums after slums, just next to the airport. And that's such a big contrast. When we left Sydney, it's almost like a picture, the coastline in Sydney. And then when we landed, it was really quite scary. And when we left the airport, and you have like all the taxi drivers or coolies, they wanted to grab your bags, and that was quite an experience.
It seems to me, from what I've read, I've never been to India, but it seems to be a very, very much a land of contrast. I was reading yesterday where they said that there's more cell phones than toilets.
Yes.
You saw that article, right?
Yes.
And here you are with a country that has a relatively booming economy, and it's one of the BRIC nations, as they call it, and yet you still have this amazing problem with poverty.
Yes, and that's always, I think that for me, that's kind of one of the most difficult parts to live in India. You always have this conflict. You have I have to say, being as a foreigner in India, you have a very, very cushy life. You have mates, you have a driver, you have a car, and people look at you differently. They think you are from another world. But at the same time, you walk on the street, you see people with no shoes, they were begging, they don't even have a place to stay, they live on the pavement. So that is a huge contrast in that city, and also because it's so small, so you can see everything together. It's not like in some cities, maybe you will see the poor area in the suburbs or something, not in the middle of the city.
So you'll have a mansion, and then right next door will be a slum.
Exactly. Like outside the apartment we stay in Mumbai, they were like 2 or 3 families. They live permanently outside
on the sidewalk.
The gate, yes.
Wow. So this book that you've finished here, does it have an English title?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me that. I think that's My Days in Mumbai.
Okay, and the Chinese is?
孟买春秋.
All right. And basically, you were saying it's a diary of the years that you spent there.
Yes. When I started writing it, as a journalist, and at the time I didn't really work full time, so I really have a lot of spare time. So I started to think all the things I experienced, they're so unique. And then every time I talked to my friends when I left India, everyone was interested. So I think I'm going to get old and I cannot remember anything. I better write everything down. So I started to write about I didn't have any plan, just anything I think that's quite interesting or unique. And I wrote it down. And at the end, I have a lot of stories. And when the publisher came and I kind of, I rearranged the stories to have a little bit of time sequence to make it like
a narrative.
Yes, a 4-year book.
I'm Eric Smith, and thanks for tuning in. All Taiwan Talk episodes can be found as podcasts on iTunes or the ICRT website.
This is Taiwan Talk.
This is Taiwan Talk on ICRT.
I'm Eric Smith, and welcome to Taiwan Talk. Joyce Liu is a former Reuters journalist who spent close to 5 years living in India, and she's now published a book about her experiences there. Joyce was kind enough to stop by the ICRT studio to tell us a bit about her years in exotic India, a country, Joyce says, where people have little choice but to make do with what they have. It sounds to me like almost everything over there is sort of makeshift. They just use what they can and what they have to get stuff done because there's no other way.
Yeah, it is that. And also, I think the attitude, that it's a very typical Indian attitude. I think it's you say karma, or they're fatalists sometimes, I think. So nothing is a big deal. They don't have a lot in their life, so everything becomes a little bit playful.
Kind of like gallows humor.
Yeah.
You might as well laugh because you don't have a choice,
what to
right?
do. They always say what to do. Okay, we might as well have a good time.
What other cultural differences between Taiwan or Chinese culture and Indian culture stood out to you?
I think in India there's no idea of privacy. There's no idea of distance. So if you're in a line, if they ever queue up, they would be like there's no space between you and the person behind you.
Personal space is not a concept.
Not at all.
Because there's no room.
No. And
right.
then they have no idea. They shouldn't look at you like...
Stare at you.
Like most of the time they stare at me. So a lot of people, they are scared. I go to India, people stare at me. But in my view, I think they are purely curious. And unless, of course, you're in a rural area or you're in a dark place and you don't know what they're thinking. But on the street, I think, seriously, I think they are just curious because you look different. The caste system, personally, I think that probably is one of the biggest issues that stop India from going ahead because of the caste system. And then people on top of the caste, the top, they don't see anything wrong with that. And people at the very bottom, they probably don't see anything wrong with that because for thousands of years,
That's
it's
just
like
how
that.
It's been.
Yeah, and that makes it, that leads to the attitude of if a guy came to fix something, he couldn't do it or he was late. He didn't think that was anything serious. If you complain, there is another layer above me. I have a boss. You can talk to him. And so everyone is doing like his own work, not anything more. And then because they come to work and then you live in a big house and something is broken, so what? That doesn't affect your life. If I come 2 hours later or 2 hours earlier, to them, they think it's nothing. So I think a lot of the attitude is because it's not, they think about the caste system all the time, but it's
ingrained.
Yes. And then they think like, it doesn't really matter. Why are you so angry about a small leaking when it's raining? You can see a lot of people, they don't even have a roof on their head.
They have a point.
Yeah. But this is because I lived there for 4 years and this time around another year. So 5 years in India. I can see a little bit of this. Not that I understand a lot, but I can see a lot of people.
You're starting to be able to see through their culture or their viewpoint.
So if people go there just for a week or 2 weeks traveling, and then you see everyone wants to rip you off, and you see the garbage, and you see all the unpleasant things, and you have a bad stomach after you drink some kind of dodgy water, and of course you have a bad experience. So I'm not saying that's wrong. It's natural,
but it's a different perspective.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I have more time to think about why this is like this. And
so in the end, did you find yourself falling in love with the people and the country in general?
Yeah, I do. And I guess my last life, maybe I was Indian. And I think people there, it's just like everywhere. People in general have a kind heart, I think. And they're always smiling, even they have nothing. You look at someone for 2 seconds, they start to smile. So that's another the big difference between personally in China and in India. In China, if you look at someone for 5 seconds, they became like, why are you looking at me? But in India, you look at them They smile. I think in the Philippines or in Thailand, it's the same. They just smile at you, like very warm people.
Interesting. So the heart of the country is gold.
Yeah, I would say so.
Well, it's been a very interesting conversation. Your book, I'll let you read the Chinese title.
孟买春秋.
All right. Seasons in Mumbai or Days in Mumbai by...
刘玉敏.
Okay. Joyce Liu, available at bookstores in Taiwan.
木马春秋.
And if you're interested in visiting India as a Taiwanese person, use your head, but you say go for it, huh?
I would say go for it. Yeah, just use your head. Use your common sense, and I don't think there would be a problem.
Reporting for ICRT's Taiwan Talk, I'm Eric Smith.